Welcome back to Couture and Construction. I'm your host, Andrew Denny, and today we're closing out Season 12, The Long Game. Throughout the season, we've talked about what lasts. We've explored the role of memory in design, the importance of the right team, homes built for real life, materials that carry stories forward, and the relationships that shape great projects. But as we started reflecting on all of those conversations, another question emerged. What are the things we still don't talk about? Not because they're controversial, not because they're negative, but because they're often uncomfortable, nuanced, or simply easier to avoid. So to close out the season, we've brought together three people who see this industry from different perspectives. Joining me today are designer Jason Bell, builder Lucas Smith, and vendor Gena Dorminey, a visual comfort. Together, we're going to talk about the realities of collaboration, communication, trust, leadership, reputation, growth, and what it actually takes to play the long game in this industry. Jason, Lucas, Gena, welcome to the show. Before we jump in, I'd love for you each to introduce yourself. Jason, why don't we start with you?
Jason Bell. I'm from Mobile, Alabama. Spent about 22 years in New York. Left New York to raise my kids back in Mobile. Took on director design at Blackberry Farm. Developed a lot of projects with them. And then went back to my company in New York. Ended up moving it down to Mobile last summer and staying in the South now, but having to be in a lot of airplanes going everywhere.
Well, good. Thank you for joining us. Gena, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So I come from a design background. So lived in New York for 11 and a half years. Started working for, at the time, what was Circa Lighting, then in New York for a few years. We are now Visual Comfort & Co. Lighting. So I moved here in early 2020, and I've been here ever since. So My role is to work with the designers, builders, and architects in the industry.
Very cool. And how big is your area?
It's Nashville proper and all of the surrounding areas.
Okay.
So not the larger Tennessee, but you know, Nashville's got a lot to give.
It's got plenty. It's got plenty. Lucas, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama.
Cool.
And went to school at Auburn. Went through their construction program and landed back in Birmingham with a custom home builder. Great family company, and was very fortunate to work with those guys for about 9 years before moving to Nashville, marrying my wife, and working in commercial for about 5 years before getting back into custom residential. So we've been operating Pritchett Smith Builders for about 6 years now.
Very cool. Yeah, y'all do beautiful work. And I think it's John Bryant and Francis Bryant, right? That you worked for in Birmingham?
College roommate,
That's right.
you know.
Yeah, very cool.
We ended up back in Birmingham together for a while.
Yeah, that's a great crew.
They're awesome. Yeah, I have a lot to be thankful for. Being able to work with John, and his dad, Steve, taught me a lot. So
very cool.
Very thankful for that family.
Well, thank you all for being here. And, this is a great ending to the season because we've talked about a lot of what makes things successful. And from our perspective and our guest perspective this season, it's been about, having the right team, the right materials, and the thoughtfulness to, make what we're doing last and be, quite honestly, just something worth it and exceptional. So, as we were closing out of the season, we thought it may be a good idea to have a conversation with a group of people about what sometimes gets overlooked in the conversation of a luxury build project. And, Lucas, I think I'll toss this one to you first. I mean, we were talking pre-recording, but a lot of times that's money. And that can be a tough subject. These are, one thing in my quarter century, I love using that phrase because it really dates but a quarter century of doing this, there's an emotional connection on these projects from our clients. And you throw money into that and there just becomes, and they're big sums of money. Like we're doing big projects, it's tough. So you're the builder. You kind of set the tone with that. And how do you talk to your clients about money?
Yeah. We're a small boutique firm and we want to stay small, and so we we haven't been doing this very long, but we try to really establish that personal connection with each client and really interview them as much as they maybe are us. Because again, this is a short-term marriage in a lot of senses where you have to talk about a lot of things, right? And be as real as you can with these clients. So that's one of the first things we ask. We have a client intake form where, we ask them everything from, how many pets do you have to what is the most important thing about this house for you, But one of the things in there is, what is your realistic budget? And also, how flexible are you with that budget,
Does that question spook them? Like, how flexible are you? I mean, is that...
It hasn't. Okay. I mean, I think the people that are coming to us with, the types of bills that they intend to proceed with are used to having these conversations.
Okay.
And they're in those important meeting rooms a lot, having, substantive conversations with people about a lot of money. And so I think for them, it's part of kind of that world a little bit, and it's expected. And it's something that I've had to get comfortable with asking, I think maybe more so than the client, They
know the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. And so anyways, it's one of the first conversations, right?
Yeah.
And then that leads into a number of other things that we can help them with, such as alignment, with designers and architects. And then obviously as it rolls into establishing real budgets that, are going to stick or very close to it, that align with their vision, not just throwing allowances there to make something feel good, but taking those several extra conversations to really get to know what a real budget for their vision is going to be as early as possible.
Jason, I'm going to toss this to you, and then Gena, we're going to come to you just kind of from the vendor perspective. But so in the order of operations, how either a client or a builder relationship would bring you into a project, how early do you like to start talking about money? Is it at that inception point as well? What does that look like from a design perspective?
So we do a contract, and I mean, I've narrowed it down so finely that I could show you imagery and say, if you want a room that looks like that, it's $150 a square foot. If you want a room that looks like that, you're looking at $300 a square foot. And you can kind of break down, whether it's the art or the fabric selections or whatever, just from the finished look or the lighting or anything. So we have that conversation. Like, I will send out a contract to someone and I will say, here's your design fee. It's based on square footage. And here is what you need to spend, the minimum per square foot. And I know what I will not go under, because I don't think they would have come to me for something that's below that. I mean, do you have to get creative sometimes? Sure. But those financial discussions are in the very beginning. Sometimes it aligns, sometimes it doesn't align. And you get dropped because they don't like the number in there. But that's the reality of, I think, kind of where I want to float in the design world, but also, I don't want to let someone down later that they didn't get a house that they were kind of envisioned.
Yeah. Do you ever in the process and do you ever have to reference those initial conversations and say, but we talked about this? And those are where some of the anxiety can come in, where it can be uncomfortable, right?
A little bit. I think if you set it up correctly in the beginning, we try very hard to build a real legitimate budget. And those budgets are built off of imagery that we start with, and we talk about, this is inspiration. And if you want to be at this level, I think you need to be at X dollar. And then we go after that and we build spreadsheets that are literally top to bottom, front to back door, and it is room by room. And I can tell them, you need to spend percentages here or there on your lighting, on your rugs, on these things that are going to really matter in the end. Or you look in a bathroom and are we just doing subway tile, or, are we doing marble? And kind of give them an idea up front of where they should be, because they can't, no one can look at what is the end number going to be. They're going to get it from the contractor, and then they have to get it from us. And so there's, sometimes there's overlap, like with wood flooring. You guys are purchasing it, but we're speccing it. I'm like, there's wood floor and there's wood floor. And I want them to have, I know what the end product's going to look like whenever we're talking about these finishes, but when they can be handed a piece of paper and you have accounted for everything from a light bulb to a piece of tile to a mirror on the wall or anything, and they can see what that bottom line number is as you're going through. Something may be discontinued, or they may see something, and I'm like, well, if you want that and we upgrade it, here's what it does to the bottom line, and let's just look at it. And we have to have those conversations all the way through, so you're not having a surprise.
Yeah. They're not
it's
just
really
opening an invoice.
The communication
at the end,
is really important.
So Gena, you and I are both in the vendor sphere of this. And for me, oftentimes it feels like we're competing against a budget. We're not even competing against competition, but we're competing against a budget. Share with me your experience with money and what we do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it, is that we are competing with that budget a lot. I think, for instance, with us, we sell lighting, but we're not just selling lighting. So remembering that a design process involves the builder, the vendors, and the designer, the architect, the homeowner. It's collaborative. So we're not just here to supply product, or our company is not. We're here to be part of that process from the beginning to the end, and to really be a partner. So thinking of it in that way, and then what that helps us to do is to establish a conversation where we can say, you come to us typically for the shiny, pretty lights, but we also actually start from the beginning. We start from that budgeting phase. Don't wait to come and talk about lighting at the end. We should be talking about what's your architectural lighting budget, what's going in that ceiling, what's going in the home from the beginning of the construction phase, from rough in, and then moving through that decorative process. But it's also not just about what is your flat budget, but what is the value that you want to add here. So talking about what kinds of appliances do you have specified? What kinds of floors? Do you have copper gutters? Are you doing a cedar shake roof? What is the value of what you're trying to achieve? Because, I think people forget sometimes that what is part of the construction of the home, maybe that they can't, it's not the big, pretty, shiny, beautiful chandelier that they're seeing, but those recessed lights. That's what's going to affect everything else on that project. And so really establishing the ability to say, where does it matter? So we might be up against a budget, but where does using the really good lighting matter? And how can we be very intentional and plan for this the way that you plan for everything else? Lighting shouldn't be an afterthought. Your flooring shouldn't be an afterthought. Everything needs to be thought about and planned from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because if you're not planning it where, one thing affects the next, then you're going to get in a situation where you're really having to cut corners. And that doesn't feel good for anyone. It doesn't feel good for the builder, for, the designer who's then having to cut things out of their project, or the homeowner, because then they're not going to end up with...
They're disappointed.
They're going to be disappointed, and they're going to feel like what they really wanted, they couldn't achieve. So also just remembering that, I think we live in a very, like you said, temporary world, unfortunately, fast-paced, temporary. We see things on Instagram. We want everybody else, what everybody else has, but it's, instead of just looking at that big picture, how do you want to create value in your home? How do you want to live? And having those really intentional conversations from the beginning.
I think that's so important. And it's funny, two things. One, I think we've done about 160 episodes of the show, and consistently our guests always speak to lighting as being like the most important thing in the overall design. They're like, if you don't have that, you don't have anything. And I have always found that somewhat interesting and a little offensive just in my industry.
Well, our lighting makes your floor so much more
yes,
beautiful.
Exactly. That's right. That's right. But secondly, I think what you shared and what Jason shared and Lucas, it all revolves around communication.
Yeah.
When I first started in this industry, and all three of you can speak to this, but in this market, not in New York, and maybe even in New York, but where both of you all have a lot of experience, and I think from my perspective, it seems like there's a different relationship between design and build in New York, where there's more definitive lanes. It seems like. In this market, it's probably been within the last 10 to 15 years, designers have become more and more prevalent. And now I can't remember the last project I worked on where there wasn't a good builder and a good designer. What do you guys look for in that process? And Gena, you're a designer first as well. So how do you guys make it work? So that there's no wires crossed, so that you're protecting one another, not protecting one another, but getting the job done. I've been part of so many projects. I've seen countless times where, when things do go sideways, it's easier to finger point than to get resolution. So Jason, you want to take a stab at that? How you've seen that evolution happen?
That's a really complicated question. No, I've seen, like you said, New York was a little more complicated. There were, we did a lot of work all over everywhere, but chunks of it being in the city where you weren't doing these ground up situations. Mm-hmm. You had a lot of owners reps that were involved in those projects. So they were kind of flowing pretty smoothly. When you get around sort of, I think in our area, I think it's really interesting to see who kind of takes the lead on a project. And the ones that don't usually aren't going to gel. And you're not going to get that dynamic of having a great architect or a great designer or the contractor or the consultants that come in, because everybody's just sort of, this is what we do best. And I think that I have found that when I don't see that happen, I will usually take a step forward and say, if you're not going to do it, I will.
Yeah.
But it kind of keeps revolving back to that communication thing or whatever. And you have some contractors who they're not really that, they just want to get their job done and
they want to build.
They want to build.
Yeah.
And they don't want to guide. You're going to have an architect who gets super busy because they have too many projects, or you have a designer so somebody has to take that lead, and the client is always waiting for it. I mean, they think that these things just all gel when you throw a bunch of people in a room, and they don't.
Yeah.
So
it can create really serious ramifications.
Yes. I mean, I may have more thoughts, but on that, but
well, Gena, what do you see from a vendor's perspective?
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because I could offer, and then Lucas will go to you, but it is interesting because there's oftentimes, I know in a typical scenario, if I can get two people on my side, that being designer builder, designer homeowner, homeowner builder, we're going to do business. But oftentimes, you don't know who the decision maker is ultimately. So what do you see in 2026?
Because so you just took the words out of my mouth. For me, that is my first question. So say the designer brings the project to me. Please introduce me to your builder. And then when I speak to the builder, can I please have a conversation with you and your electrician together? And so for me, if I can connect the dots of every single person that's involved in that process, not that they're always going to be communicating with me, but because the designer might be or the architect might be specifying the product. And then when it comes down to actually delivering, making sure that the people installing it are clear on what they're doing, the designer, might not be as integral into that process. And so, I learned a big lesson when I first moved here of, somebody would come to me, spec product, and I would say, okay, when do you want it delivered? They would give me that date. And if I wasn't communicating with the builder who had the PM, and specifically probably that project manager on site, and potentially even the electrician, then we might deliver it too early, because there's not a communication factor where I can say, you know, they might just assume based on another vendor that they've worked with that we can ship it here, warehouse it, and we can hold it for 6 months. You know, but if I know who that builder is, I can say, hey, this is my process. This is how we do things and why we do things the way we do. And then what can I do to fit into the puzzle for you? And then what can I do to help this run smoothly? Then I have the ability to pivot and make sure that I'm recognizing the pain points for everyone in this process. And you're kind of like a circus conductor a little bit, you know? And because you really have to be able to have a clear outside vision from kind of an outside perspective to understand everything that's going on. So if there's no gatekeeping and I'm allowed to be involved and understand the process, and I always say that to people, you know, the first time we work together, we might have some hiccups just because I don't know how you work. But the more you communicate with me and the more that I can be involved, you know, when we do a delivery, I am there for the rough end. I open boxes. I talk to people and say, hey, these are some scenarios that we could run into that I've experienced. It's really just getting your hands dirty. And I also have found that I have to be the person to say, okay, if they're like, no, I've got it. No, I actually do need to talk to you about this. I need to get in front of you. So I think it's my job to do that and to be a little bit, not pushy about it, but you know, you never want people to feel like that. But I do want them to realize that I am trying to communicate heavily so that I can just help me and my team can help the process move more smoothly.
Sure.
So for me, that has changed. You know, we've been in Nashville for 6 years, and it has been really integral and helping us get a great flow on processes. And then you have people that want to come back because the end goal is we all want the client to be happy. And we don't ever want the designer, the builder, anyone to come out of this feeling you're going to have things that go wrong. But when they go wrong, they're always going to go wrong. So just knowing that, being upfront and honest about it, taking care of it, and just owning it, and, you know, trying to rectify it as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that communication factor, you can't do that.
Yeah, no, you definitely 100% need the communication factor. Lucas, what's your take on it? I mean, how do you like to work with the team, and what do you find works best for the client?
Yeah, I mean, I think all projects are inherently different, right? You've got owners that are very involved and some that aren't. You've got designers sometimes that are friends of the family and some that aren't. And so it's situational, I think. 20 years ago when I first got in this business, which is weird to say now, but in Birmingham especially, the process, you know, if I'm referencing it now, seemed very traditional. The architect would call us builders and say, hey, I've got a project coming out to bid. You'd go pick up a set of plans. It'd have everything to the T, a spec book this big. You'd be bidding against other builders, you know, and that was the routine, right? But when you started that project, you had every single thing in that book or on those plans. And, you know, building isn't the same now, but you know, there were big projects where we didn't have change orders, you know, and I can't remember the last time that didn't happen the first week, right? Recently. So now it feels far different. You know, I think owners are evaluating value to them. You know, a lot of times architects aren't really in the picture once they draw the plans, right? Unfortunately. And that's typically a budget thing. And so then the designer kind of picks up where the architect left off, right? And is trying to incorporate that, you know, their design into a set of plans that they didn't really have ownership in to begin with. And so it creates it does kind of create some confusion on who's doing what, who's responsible for figuring this out. And it seems like our major role, other than building, right, is just coordinating the chaos. It's 1,000 emails a month, right? Where do those go to live? Who's tracking those? And so we've, really invested in leveling up our project management team with the help of some tech to do that allows us to put all of those texts and conversations and emails and everything you have on site in a place where everybody can see it, documented from start to finish. And so that, I think, is what it boils down to for us. Beyond that is just expectation management between us and the owner. We don't want to be the guys to hurt your feelings if we say, hey, you know what, we're over budget on this. We're not going to be able to get that cool light fixture or whatever. So really, it's just having those difficult conversations with them monthly, right? Because stuff is going to happen, and it does every day. And just not letting any little thing snowball. Just go face it head on as soon as you know it. And typically it's not as bad as it seems, right? And so I feel like I'm rambling now, but that's really kind of in a nutshell what we see day to day is just that. It's just that constant communication. Scream if you know something as soon as you know it.
I think that's actually really valuable advice, is deal with it as soon as possible. Like, go ahead and get it out there. And Jason, I mean, when you encounter a problem, share with us how you handle that. And let me be more specific, do you try to figure out the solution, or do you make everybody aware of the problem?
Definitely figure out a solution. Most, I'd say 70% of the projects I work on, I mean, it's tight, like super tight with the contractor, very tight with the owner. The owners are, I mean, I know like you become very, very good friends. And so they come to me a whole lot more than they're going to go to the contractor or an architect, because they want to know how to discuss something or how to handle it or whatever. So usually in those cases, I will know from the contractor, hey, this went wrong. And before, like if a client calls, I'll say, let me gather some information. Let me get back to you. Instead of just trying to be drama or whatever, like just delete the drama, deal with the problem, and then come up with a solution. And then when you're working really well with a contractor, you want to say, here's the most cost-effective way we can fix this or redesign it. And there are a million ways to design to create a solution to something. And people get so fixated, I think, in the beginning on, well, this is what was on paper. And I'm like, well, there's 100 other ways to do it.
That's right. Yeah.
So, some could be more expensive. Some could be a savings. A little bit. Let's just discuss it. And so we do that a lot.
I actually love that and want to work with you way more.
Me too.
That's great.
And that's how it should be. Like, there's a rationale there. Lucas, how do you deal with those issues? I mean, would you rather bring a solution or have a problem? Or, just discuss the problem. And my personal take is, I don't want to talk to anybody until I have a few options. As opposed to just a problem.
Yeah, and that's typically the way it just kind of evolves, on site. If a superintendent calls and says, hey, we got an issue here, we're not going to be able to, whatever it is. We're going to have several conversations on what the options are before we're going to take that to the client and say, hey guys, we ran into this, here's why. And we've been talking, here's 2 or 3 options, on how to mitigate this. And really, I mean, the most important thing around that is just telling them, you know, you got to bring it to them versus just doing something to fix it, right?
Yeah.
And you know, not letting them have that ownership of the fix. It's like it's their house, of course, right? And so again, it's just being open about it. Hey, this didn't go right for some reason. You know, we own that. Here's our options. And 9 times out of 10, it's an easy conversation.
Sure. I would probably share that, and I know Jason for sure, just because of the way you walked through your process. We can see a project complete almost from the dirt, right? I mean, we can see it down to, I always joke, I can see the flowers, you know, where they're supposed to be. Like, I can just see it done. One thing I think that's an interesting conversation is sometimes we overestimate the ability to imagine of our clients. How do you lead your clients through a process that is this long and taking that into account and like providing the education and keeping them cool, calm, and collected? What has your experience led you to do in those situations? I find a common way for us to have gap in expectations with our client is we're able to see things in our mind's eye that they can't. And we have to lead them through a process so that it makes sense and that they are willing to make an investment along the way of time, money, energy, and that what they imagined and what is being done ultimately come together. Because if not, that's where the gap in the expectation exists. How do you bring clients through that? And of course, there's a trust factor, and that's what they kind of hired you for. But is there a skill set that you bring, you know, to help them navigate the process?
I think I'm following that correctly.
Long-winded question.
So we try very hard in the beginning and just kind of like a tennis match of back and forth with information. And it's
a great analogy.
It's imagery that is suggestive. It's based on location. It's based on the people, the family, how they live. And some people come to you and they have, 20 years of files. We're building our dream house. Some people are building their 6th house and it doesn't matter. So then you're taking more that location as a guide. But you minimize the issues of having to explain to people along the path if you can get enough documentation in front of them so they understand that this entrance hall is going to look like this. Our kitchen's going to look like this. Not that you're copying a publication or a design or a photo, an imagery that someone put on, but it's sort of like, this is the feeling. But then when you have all this set of things over here that we've pulled together, but this is all the icing, but you gave them that expectation of what to expect. There was a wood wall, there was a wood ceiling, there was a plaster wall and a plaster wall, and here's the glass wall. So when you're good enough at finding the imagery to make them understand what physical space is going to look like without having to go pay someone to put it into 3D or which sometimes you have to do. But if you can get that in front of someone and make them understand what you're doing, they relax and then they start seeing all these selections kind of come together and they trust you. I mean, and then it's all on me and you, and we use your lighting folks all the time for the recessed lights, and I mean, it you have to give them that. You got to use pictures from your portfolio.
It's really documentation, like you shared.
Yeah,
it's intense documentation. Staying with you, Jason, how do you lean into your vendors to help deliver? I mean, you used a term earlier, consultants. And so, I mean, is it, in that scenario, you're just painting, you're creating an image. What is your expectation from a vendor's participation in that?
I think the relationships with the vendors are probably what makes us, be able to do half of what we do. And I could, just because you're from Visual Comfort and I can use it as an example, our rep, I mean, if it's a lighting situation that I don't know how to deal with or whatever, I can call them and they're like, give me the details, give me the drawings, let me talk to the electrician, let me talk to the contractor. They will do, like, if it's a fabric house, they will, some fabric got messed up in shipping or whatever. You call, like, you use these people that you have years of experience working with, and those relationships they get you over a bump. I mean, if I don't have a good relationship with a contractor, it is a rough road. And sometimes you just have to get past it. You got to find that happy medium and, happy ground with somebody. But I rely on our vendors heavily. And I mean, it may be the tile folks, the stone yards, you can't find something got broken. I mean, they don't have time to go look for another slab. I mean, I can pick up the phone and call 30 cities across the country and say, hey, help me find this here where I need it tomorrow. I mean, you can't do that if you don't have good relationship with the vendors. Yeah.
Lucas, what about you? I mean, you depend heavily on them every day as well, right?
I would say that's the key. I heard somebody say this, oftentimes you're only, as a builder, you're often only as good as your worst sub. Right. And so we're not the guys physically doing the stuff on the site. Right. And so we rely heavily on their expertise. We rely heavily on their showroom experiences. Right. We've got a lot of people, not just vendors for, lighting or plumbing, but some framing suppliers that have, they want to bring everybody in and show the 3D model so that, you're starting out with a better understanding of what this house looks like and what it's going to take to get there. And it's I think, valuable to a lot of homeowners who haven't done it before, have a harder time maybe visualizing things. And it helps kind of set the tone for the scale and the amount of information that's being relayed to everybody over the course of a couple years during a build. We like to keep really good relationships with our vendors and, do favors when we can, because there's always going to be times when, we need a favor, right? So,
do you both believe that your clients understand how important the vendor is? Or, is that something that the end user, that the client, that the dwelling owner fully understands? Or do you think they have a perspective that the materials and people are somewhat interchangeable?
On our end, like, if I take a client sourcing and I'll take them to a Visual Comfort, like, there's the lights, they'll meet my vendor. Our vendors will be like, hey, I will say, we're going to have cocktails this afternoon. Yeah. Do you want to come? And then you do, and they understand what that relationship is. You'll be going through a tile store, plumbing. I mean, like, every one of those vendors, like, they are, like, I've known them for years, and there's a lot of communication. The vendors are always so good. They involve the client if the client wants to be involved, and they don't. If we're the ones who kind of coordinate that, really. Yeah. But I would say that the ones who do want that communication and they do want to be part of it, we allow it to happen. And some of them are just like, we're busy. Sorry, fifth house. Yeah. Done that before.
Lucas, do you think your clients understand the importance of the vendors?
I think some do, right? It's really hard to say until you really get into the finishes, right, of any build, and have those clients kind of interact with your guys on site. We've got a great finish carpenter who really takes the lead on introducing himself to the client, which is kind of new to me, right? Those guys have typically worked in the background. But like day one, he was, hey, how are you? I'm going to be the guy holding your hand until we're all gone, you know, and he's right. And so it was really a great thing for us to see, because number one, he cares, right? And he's right in that, you know, it really is kind of all about how you finish on these big jobs. They can go great for a year and a half and then fizzle at the end just for whatever reason. And so, yeah, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily that they care to know who the vendor is, or from the start. I think really the important thing around that is us being able to help them align a budget that allows them to use the vendor or sub that we think that they really want to get whatever final outcome they're looking for.
It seems when, you know, you mentioned earlier that the kind of pre-construction process of the architect and the team all coming together, those really do get some fantastic results, because everything is relatively thought out before the process unfolds. And it seems that vendors are more in the background in that, but to a client, but that's because everything is collated and you know, prepared before the process really gets underway. Gena, what have you found in your time in Nashville that has changed with our clients and you know, just the process? Something that maybe people wouldn't know unless we talked about it. What's something that you've seen change in the 6 years that you've been here with Visual Comfort?
You mean for the designers and the
just
builders?
in the industry?
I think there is becoming, you know, it's our job, we were talking about this earlier, to really educate people on the value of what we're adding. So not just selling people products, but actually helping them understand that we provide a service. We are there to be a partner. So I think people often, even when I was in New York, it's like, oh, you just sell me your lights. You know, this was, I guess, 9 years ago when I first started. And it's really not that anymore. I think people truly, and designers, I feel kind of used to gatekeep a little bit more, and maybe we're hesitant to like bring their client into the showroom. And for good reason at some points, you know, because they might start changing their mind and shopping and doing all this kind of thing. But to the point that they both made, you know, really just showing the value of these relationships, and that we are not just here to sell a product. That these vendors truly are like part of the process. You know, so much of what we do is just recognizing that they have to wear the hat of like, you know, they're expected to know everything about everything on a project. And so it's been really wonderful to see my clients leaning into the fact that we are experts at what we do. And instead of trying to be the expert at everything, leaning into using us, you know, to the best of our ability and allowing us to help them through the process. And there's people where I'm very much still behind the scenes, and that is okay. To me, it doesn't matter. But really, I think just helping, you know, I've seen a shift in people leaning into us more as that like service offering versus just selling product. I think that's probably the biggest change I've seen.
Very cool.
Which is nice.
No, absolutely. Because that's what it's all about, right? I mean, it's you become a commodity if it's not that.
Exactly. And we go back to that question about, you know, the issues that can arise on projects and how do you solve that? And, you know, even budget, things like that. When somebody just comes to me and says, send me a quote, and I just send them a quote, and then I don't hear from them, and then it comes back that maybe the quote was too high. Well, I now know immediately after sending that, hey, give me your feedback. Let's talk about this. Because the reality is there are so many different nuances of what matters in a project that I quoted what you asked for, but there's so many other ways that we can alter this to make it align with your project, your client, what works. So it shouldn't always be about that bottom line price. So I've started seeing people understand that a bit more and be willing to come to us and give us more information on the front end. But that also is part of us kind of explaining to them how we can be there for them in that scenario. Or something goes wrong, me asking a lot of hard questions. Here's 10 solutions, but like, this is why each of them might be good or not be good for your project. So help me understand. So really just, I think people being more communicative with us has been a big thing. It wasn't that for a while. It
feels like people are a little bit more empowered because of the information they have available to them. So they understand what type of outcome they'd like to get. And I think they do ask better questions now than 5-10 years ago. I think
than just saying something went wrong.
Shift.
Yeah. So that's been a big change for me over the past 9 years.
Yeah. Jason, in just one or two words, you have a new opportunity with a new client. What are you looking for to understand if it's going to be a good fit for you? And are there any earmarks of knowing it's not going to be a good fit? And I'm going to ask each of you this. So if Lucas, you want to take a crack at it first?
Yeah, I think really for us, it's just the one or two words, let's meet, right? And having done this for a while now, you can trust your gut, right? You start having a conversation with somebody, and it's at this point with the experience behind us, you're going to kind of get a feel on whether or not a client will be somebody who aligns with you or not. And I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah. Gena, what about you?
Somebody, if bottom line cost is kind of their biggest driving factor. It's not to say that they're not our customer, because that's not true. Everybody has budgets. We all always, I'm not here to be the most expensive person in the room, but if someone is unwilling to understand, I think I've said value 1,000 times a day, but to understand the value of what we have to offer and the partnership, because at that point we're willing to be flexible and figure out how we can get there on the price.
Sure.
But if they're coming in and it's just bottom line, we want the cheapest.
Somewhat devaluing.
It devalues you. It devalues everything
really
about the project. And to us, it just feels like it's not the type of, it just doesn't align with what we do.
So both of you gentlemen, and Jason, I'm going to get to you. I'm not letting you off the hook. But both of you all probably have a slightly easier opportunity to bow out of those opportunities than a vendor. If it's because I'm most likely dealing with one of your clients in that situation, or Gena is most likely dealing with one of your clients. So I think that's just somewhat interesting is we have, you get to trust your gut at the very beginning and be like, ooh, this is a train wreck. Don't want this happening. But Jason, how do you gauge? I mean, and do you have kind of a spidey sense that you can tell if this is somebody that, because it's a long engagement, right? I mean, for you or you, it's anywhere from 2 to 5 years.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, so it's
definite spidey sense for sure. My phone doesn't ring off the hook, which is great. It is, I'd say, 100% recommendation. And you will get, I'll have clients who will say, do you want me to tell them to call you or not tell you? And then they'll kind of give you a little bit of insight on, what the project is and what type of friend that they are in their, social world or whatever. And the clients are kind of a big defender for me. And that's really nice. When you do get a cold call, you kind of know pretty quick. And it's hard to deal with when you don't want to take the project on. But,
Yeah.
there's always we're a year out, whatever. There's always going to be some way of saying, thank you, but no thank you. But it's very obvious when it's a good fit or bad fit.
Yeah. So it does jump out to you guys.
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like you can interview someone and they'll say, well, why don't you come to our house and let's have a conversation? That is like key for me. I was like, how are you living right now? Because if it's nowhere close to where you think you're getting to, then you're probably not going to get there with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So pipe dreams.
Yeah. Love it. But it is interesting, just in uncovering that. Like if you guys take on a client, and I can't tell you how many times over the years that I've had my designer or builder contact that's sending somebody be like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry in advance. And it's like these poor people, they've had to get into it, and and their spidey sense didn't work, or something changed midstream, and it becomes very, very difficult to navigate. Starting to get to a place where we can wrap up, but I do want to talk about I think all of us would agree to one extent or another that technology has helped the process, to your point earlier, documentation, visualization. But for our clients, like what is helpful and what is not? Because, there's a lot of information, and what helps and what hinders? Jason, I want to start with you. I mean, is there a picture overload? Is there a sensory overload with some of this stuff? What's your experience with that?
Definite overload. Everybody thinks you can just throw something in AI now and it's going to give you some, and I'm like, no, it doesn't. Let's just don't start there. I think, I don't know. Can we come back to me?
Yeah, absolutely.
I got to think about that.
Gena, in your experience, what, is it too much, not enough? How does it help you?
For us, you mean just the world of AI?
No, just the world we live in now, where our clients do derive an authority from information. And that flow of information is super fast. And sometimes it may be AI and it's not even achievable. Many times it's that. It's where is the line from it being helpful to help guide them to where it becomes hindrance. And as an example, and this one's old. This one's not even relevant so much today. But I submitted an estimate a few weeks ago to a builder, attached a picture of the material. Builder sent it to the designer for approval. Designer freaked out because by the time the picture, I guess, had been snipped 3 or 4 times, it had a red hue. And, she sends it back to me. I didn't pick something red. And I'm like, no, I don't know what's going on with that, but it's the exact right material. It's the same thing. And it's just like an example like that, where in actually trying to do something helpful to making sure we're on the same page, just a screen, created some form of doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I think the amount of information that's just available to people can be really challenging. So you sit down with your designer and make a lot of decisions, and then somehow your Instagram starts flooding you with a lot of new ideas, and they start second guessing and questioning, making changes, coming back. I think there is a lot of power in knowledge, but sometimes the power in the knowledge, to me, most of the time is when we are providing it to the designer, the architect, the builder. I do think it's good for the client to understand what they're getting, to be able to see, touch, feel. We have created these lighting labs now throughout the country. They're customer experience centers where we can actually show you the shades, how the lights work. You can touch them. But on the flip side of that, if a client is then leaving and going and Googling all of the new, I've had homeowners come back to me. They're like, what about this color temperature and this CRI, and it's great that they're trying to educate themselves, but sometimes there's too much out there for a homeowner. And it's really just finding that fine line of the designer and the builder being able to provide that guidance, and us giving guidance, but really providing the information to them to be the knowledge source. And so it's kind of twofold. The touch and feel, though, I mean, if you can't see product in person, if you can't see what it does, I mean, that is forever going to be the best way to sell a product, or to help people understand the value of something. And technology has allowed us to do that. It's allowed us to create these places where we can show this stuff.
So the example Gena just gave, you guys are on the periphery of that experience, okay? Because your client is in visual comfort and comes back. At what point do you guys help Gena get out of that? Now we're talking about these different temperatures, and we're kind of over our skis. At what point do you guys jump in and share, hey, let me field that one for you, or get them on to something else? Because ultimately, I think, again, you used a great term earlier, the gap of expectation. Now we're getting out of alignment. Now that chief that you were talking about earlier is out on, their own reservation while everybody else is over here. And that can really create very unintended consequences down the line. But how do you guys help solve something like that? Because I'm sure you've seen it before.
I mean, I think every situation is different. So if it were a lighting situation and someone started talking about color temperatures and this and that and the other, I would just say, you know what? If you saw something in a showroom, the light is going to be different than what it is when the sun's setting on the Gulf of Mexico, and your beach house is going to have all these warm hues. Like we can go mock up a little thing, or we can sit here at a certain hour of the day, but that is going to change per season. So you got that, you just have to trust me, is usually what I would say to them. And
that nips it.
I'm like, yeah,
perfect.
And they do.
Yeah. Well, that's why they're writing you the check, right?
So,
I mean,
Right. I think we're, as builder, maybe a little bit more lucky in this conversation, because a lot of the Instagram pictures and inspo and can we do this, can we do that, is usually maybe fielded more so by you guys than it gets filtered to us, right? And so I'm thankful for that, right? Because anybody can build anything on the internet, so, but it comes up every now and then. I think for us, kind of the, where AI and tech, I think this may have been your original question. How do you see clients interact with that? I think it is very specific to the client. We have a lot of tools at our disposal to track information now. Whether or not the client wants to be a part of that or not is their call. We're going to send it to you anyways, right? There's always an element of kind of CYA in our business, right? I gave you the information. If you don't want to look at it, cool. It's there for you. But for us, it's a very valuable tool to, again, not to harp back on this, but just to be able to track all those conversational decisions that aren't really made on a set of plans or in an email. And it provides a level of accountability to everybody to say, oh no, I don't think I said that. Well, here's the meeting minutes. We logged them here in this program. We sent it, And so I think in a lot of senses, it's really starting to empower us as builders, right? And so I don't really know how that answers the question for the homeowner themselves. Yeah, you're always going to have people who do a lot of their own research and come up with their own ways to do this or that, or fact check something you did, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's just kind of a more of a case by case basis for us.
Yeah.
It's not something that we honestly. That's not a big thing that we deal with much.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I usually just try to ensure them that whatever vision they want to achieve, that we're working closely with the designer to do that. And so while
That's a great answer.
You see that
Right
punt-
back to
that
you.
punt.
Yeah.
while they
Right back to you.
can while they can like focus on those nuances, we are creating something that we can guarantee that will be beautiful for them.
Yeah.
And just trying to remind them that getting into those weeds sometimes is
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's
Not
also
helpful.
being able to just like understand how to talk around through the weeds or whatever
Yes.
with people is a skill set. And I think it takes a lot of time to, I think, get that. But, you know, when you can talk someone off the ledge by being like, you know what, let's just don't talk about that. I mean, and they're like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, because, but let's just move on. And then you literally, like my brain, who is severely ADD, will jump up. I'm like a squirrel. I'll just jump subjects and then they'll never realize what happened.
I had a text the other
Perfect.
day.
I love that. I love
Of
that.
like all of these, and at the end I just said, I feel highly confident about everything we've selected.
Yeah. No, that's
And-
great.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it was, it's just, sometimes people just need that. They want that. That's why they're coming to people who know what they're doing. They want you to just help them
Bless
feel,
it.
to bless
Yeah.
it. That's all they want to hear. Not for you to get into the weeds with them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's a big investment, and
Yeah.
they're unsure, and they want somebody to say, yeah, you're doing
they hired
the right thing.
And they do have such a lack of experience, unless it's their 5th or 6th home, which those are the easiest clients in the world. But people don't select flooring often. They don't select recessed lighting. They, aren't choosing brick colors in the nuance. And it's like, it could become so overwhelming that it's something that I think we underestimate sometimes how tough the process is. So with that, I want to get to kind of what I think is our last big question. Jason, I'm going to start with you. What do people underestimate about what it takes to create a great project? What do our clients really learn maybe the hard way or underestimate what it's going to take to create a great project, aside from money? That's probably the number one answer because
Time.
Okay.
I mean, one word answer.
Yeah.
They don't have a clue what it takes to make perfection. And it's interesting when you finish the house and they're looking at it before an installation and they look at it afterwards, they can never in the beginning understand, the timeline, even that they can read it on an Excel sheet from the contractor. They just don't understand how much time is taken by a vendor to make that one piece of the 700 pieces fit together, or they don't get it.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Gena, what's the thing people underestimate for a great outcome? Now time and money are off the table.
I know.
So,
Well,
Lucas, you better be thinking.
The patience and the planning process. And that every time something changes, it's going...
There's a ripple.
There's a ripple. And it's a ripple for everything on your project. It's going to take more time. You run into the risk of, maybe a decision that was made, if we've changed that decision 5 times, even if we have it documented, remembering why we pivoted all these times. So just trying, I think it's trusting the process, but also understanding that there is a lot of planning that goes involved, like along with it. And you have to be patient with the process and understand, to get it right, it has to be done the right way.
Yeah, totally.
And it can't be rushed.
Absolutely. Lucas, what's your take on this? What do people underestimate in the process for a great outcome?
Those are both great answers. I think the other thing is just the fact that this is a very imperfect process. There's going to be a lot of things you got to take another look at. They think they're hiring a group of professionals to help them build this home, right? And they are, but still there are so many things that can not go right or can happen, or you need to shift and pivot, all those words. And that's every week, right? It happens a lot. And so,
Week, you're lucky.
yeah, well, every day, hopefully not. But yeah, I think that they don't understand the amount of that. I mean, it is not always pretty, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to be pretty, but it's going to take a lot of imperfection to be able to see maybe what you don't want first, and then get to that sweet spot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I've noticed over my career is the people we serve generally work in industries, and, you know, they have a team of MBAs that, you know, if they're executing, it is a pretty linear process, and there's a team, and they don't have to worry necessarily about environmental concerns, meaning if it snowed, it doesn't stop a spreadsheet from getting made. But all of these little things that are sometimes within our control, but a lot of times out of the control of the people in the process, have ripple effects that imperfect process, I think, is probably the best way to put it. And that's one thing that I've seen over time really be a struggle for many of our clients. And we're a small part of it, but by the time they get to us, I mean, they talk, whatever, and it's something out of their control. And they are used to, especially at this spend or investment size, like they're used to a different outcome that they have more control over. And I feel sometimes like our clients feel powerless. And they are. Like, I mean, we all are. We can't stop it from raining, or a flash flood, or an ice storm that slows something down for 2 weeks, or a back order, or an embargo in Iran, or, you know, any number of things that are
or that we're human.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. But I mean, we forgot something.
Yeah.
We made a mistake. We did. That is the wrong color.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes is and those add up over time. And most of the time, I feel like clients are very ready for the process to be over. And then they see like what it was, and they forget all about that because they absolutely love the end result. Yep. And I think that's where it becomes very gratifying for all of us, is just managing those expectations, doing the delivery, staying on top of it. Because really, at the end of the day, we're building very, very pretty things. And that makes it gratifying for us. So, well, okay. It is now time for rapid fire. I truly appreciate you all talking about what we don't talk about enough. I felt like that was a fun conversation. And, you know, it's neat sometimes to just think in the abstract, but it's a definitely a trial and tribulation sometimes. So, Jason, coming to you first, same question, all three people. One skill you'd love to learn?
AI.
Yeah, me too.
Took my answer. Pottery. I'll go in the other direction.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, AI, but
Lucas?
also I think welding.
Yeah.
I'd love to get into that.
Oh, that's very cool. That's a good one. Man, welding, time machine, go back and be on that SpaceX.
I don't think I want to weld.
Did you hear about the welder that joined SpaceX like 7 or 8 years ago?
First billionaire welder now.
Well, he made like $2.8 million, and you know, and he's like way down, but it was so cool to see that happened. Okay, Jason, back to you. The most underrated skill in construction.
So I thought about this before we got here, and I don't know if it makes any sense, but dedication.
That makes total sense. Yeah, caring, dedication. Yep. Yeah, that is. That's kind of, you were telling the story about your trim carpenter earlier, or your carpenter.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's very cool. Gena, most underrated skill in construction.
I'd say patience. But if it's an actual skill, like what somebody's tangibly doing, the woodworking. I mean, I think the people that are doing, like, there's such the skill, and I feel like, you know, we're losing a lot of those amazing trades. Like I look at like a James Dunn here, you know, and it's like, wow, how do you do that? You know, such an incredible skill.
I know.
So,
yeah, I got stuck at a desk for the first 3 or 4 years of my career as an estimator, and it's by far the most valuable tool that I've been taught.
Oh,
and,
very cool.
So I think estimating, we all talk about it, but a truly skilled estimator who, is afforded the opportunity to spend some time working on a set of plans for a while, that's, I think that speaks to me.
It's invaluable.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer. So, okay, Jason, back to you. One word that defines good leadership.
I have 3.
No, you can.
I'm only going to use one.
No, you can use 3 if you like.
All right. I have organization, willpower, and determination.
I like all of those. Yeah. Organization's a really good one. I haven't thought about that one. Yeah. A well-organized leader. That's actually very helpful. It's probably my biggest downfall.
I think the determination part, though, like if you can
Grit.
you got to get there.
Yeah.
And when you're determined, you figure it out.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Gina?
I think just knowing, like knowing yourself, knowing that when you know when something's right or wrong, or when, you need to stand up for something, and doing that with integrity and, not wavering. I think that's a skill that's something that I've really had to learn over time, to not question your reality,
Sure.
And when you do that and you're able to know in yourself, you're a better leader for others.
Yeah.
So it's a tough
maturity
one.
and-
Yeah. 'Cause you've got things coming at you all the time, and it's really easy to question, did I do something wrong? Should I make a different decision? Should I apologize for this over and over and over? And ultimately it's just knowing and that things are going to be fine,
Yeah.
and then people see that in you. And I think that they feel better working with you.
Yeah. Great answer. Great answer. Lucas, one word that defines good leadership.
There's a lot. I think patience is a good one for me. You work with a lot of people every day, right? And everybody has different strengths and weaknesses, and so maybe that kind of, understanding, I think, is another it's kind of the same word in some degree. So just, listening to people, understanding them, and then, providing honest feedback.
Yeah, very, very cool. Jason, Lucas, Gena, thank you all for joining us and helping us close out season 12. One of the things I've loved most about the season is that we've spent a lot of time talking about craftsmanship, stewardship, reputation, and longevity. But at the heart of all of those conversations is something much simpler: people. The relationships we build, the trust we earn, and the way we show up for one another over time. That's the long game. To everyone who's listened to this season, thank you for being part of the conversation. We appreciate your support and look forward to bringing you more stories from the people shaping the build environment. This has been Couture and Construction, hosted by Andrew Denny. The show is produced by Cast Collective and Chelsea Rand. Until next time, keep cultivating creativity.